This is the I Will Teach You a Language podcast, episode 139.
Welcome to the I Will Teach You a Language podcast. Weekly motivation and language learning tips to help you become fluent in any language. Now, here's your host, Ollie Richards.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Very happy to have you here. Now, here's the thing with the podcast, right? We've got now 139 episodes, and in each episode, I talk about language learning and I give you a tip of some kind. That's at least 139 tips. In reality, it's probably more like 1,000 because I can't stop talking most of the time, right? But what happens when it all gets too much? What happens when you feel like, okay, I know that there are 1,000 things I could do to learn a language. Well, what do I do now? Like, what's my next step? We've got a very, very interesting question today that really gets to the heart of this, and I'm really looking forward to that. Before we do that, I'd like to thank the sponsors of the show, and if you need to speak more in your target language, if you need to get more airtime, as I call it, then iTalki is one of the best places that you can go to in order to get that speaking time at a time that suits you. If you'd like to get a free lesson, you can go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/free lesson. Now, let's get into this question, which was actually 9 minutes long. So I've had to cut it down, regretfully. I think what I'll do is I'm going to play you a few highlights, and I'll play you a few highlights of what I think really get to the core of what this guy's asking, and I will fill in any gaps afterwards. Let's go.
Hi, Ollie. I'm Klaas from Germany, and I started learning Italian in 2008. Had a lot of breaks in between, and now resumed learning Italian in March on a daily basis, and I'm about a B2 level, and aiming to do the IWTYAL, the certificate for C1 level in December of this year, so in less than 3 months from now. I need to have a target in order to somehow move on from my plateau. And, just for some reason, I just discovered your podcast yesterday, and I immediately downloaded 20 of them because I liked the topics and they applied to me, and listened to 4 hours worth of material today only. Really heads up, really. I'm really impressed by all of this material, and you just do that whilst having a real-time job as well. So I'm really impressed. Anyhow, my question, and I'm far beyond the expectation of 1 minute already. Again, I'm struggling to move forward from my B2 to C1. I'm quite okay from a speaking point of view, let's say, but when it comes to movies and reading articles or books, I really tend to struggle. I struggle to see to determine where exactly I find myself right now and what exactly needs to be done, even though I have 2 different teachers on Verblink.
Hi, Klaas. Thank you very much for your question. And, first of all, I'm sure I can feel the frustration in your voice, and I'm sure everybody listening can sympathize with what you're saying and your situation. And, my apologies for cutting down your question, but I tried to maintain the essence of what you're asking about. And, you mentioned that you've just kind of discovered this, the kind of polyglot community, as you called it, online. And I think what you're going through right now is actually pretty predictable, and it happens to a lot of people. And I think a lot of people listening now will relate to this because they've been through it as well. Now, I think it's obviously it's wonderful that you've gone ahead and listened to 4 hours of the podcast. Thank you very much. I hope that's time well spent. I think hopefully for more longer term listeners, what I would aim to get across, what I hope I do get across in my discussions about language learning, is something about the essence of why we do this. Yes, I talk about tips and tricks and techniques and things like that. And that's what you're looking for right now. I get that. But what I try to talk about equally is the heart and soul of language learning and why we do it. And we all have different reasons. You know, some of us want to get a promotion at work. Some of us have a family member we want to talk to. Some of us want to pass exams or whatever. Some of us just do it for gratification and self-development. That's why I do it, really. But there is huge potential for frustration, and there is huge potential for language learning to become a burden and a chore. And I see it happening in many people, and I can detect it slightly in your voice. And it comes from, I think, trying to intellectualize the process a little bit too much. I know because I'm the same. I'm exactly, the things that you're saying, Klaus, in your message are exactly the kind of thing that I find myself thinking, that many other people find themselves thinking as well. And there comes a point, I think, where you really have to make a choice. Now, I don't know, you mentioned that you've got this goal of passing a C1 Italian exam. I don't know whether you need to do that, or whether it's just because you think it's going to help you become motivated and keep going. And you mentioned that you've been learning since 2008. That's quite a long time. I'm guessing, reading between the lines, that you have no particular need to learn. It's just something that you love to do, right? And so I think I haven't prepared this answer, actually. Usually for my podcast episodes, I do prepare bullet points of what I'm going to talk about to try and be succinct. But I didn't do this time because I think what you need is not, I could give you a long talk about strategy and planning your schedule and all those things, but honestly, I've covered that in previous episodes. There's a 3-part series on time management that many people found very useful in terms of organizing their time, and that was back in episode 48, 49, and 50, if you want to check that out. We don't need more techniques here. What we need is, I think, what I'd like to give is my reaction to your question and the way that you've asked it. And I feel my distinct impression is that you need to inject a bit of love and passion back into your Italian. And the stress, which I think you're experiencing right now, and it's stress. It seems funny to say it, right? Stress is something that we get from work. But no, people like us who think deeply about what we want and are used to using our brain power to achieve anything that we want to achieve, we suffer from stress when logic and planning and intellect don't help us with our language learning, or don't get us the results that we want. It's stressful. We're not used to that kind of disempowerment, disenfranchisement of our intellect, if you like. Because language learning it's an art, it's a humanity, it's so many things, in addition to the intellectual aspect of actually learning it. And what I've noticed in myself, many, many times, time and time again actually, is that there is a direct correlation between the amount of stress that I feel over how to learn a language, and what I'm doing every day, and the effectiveness with which I actually end up learning it. And the worst time of this for me was when I was first learning Cantonese, and I was spending like 3 hours a day, and it was just 3 hours a day wasted because I had this mentality of, I have to do more, I have to do better. And I think we've got to get away from that, and we have to connect with the roots of why we're learning. And you mentioned so many things in your message, Claire. I don't have time to play all of the things that you mentioned, all these different techniques, resources, teachers, all these different things that you could do, and it sounds like you are trying to do. But all that does is it ends up sucking the joy out of the process. And the only way that you are going to really push beyond this intermediate plateau that you find yourself at in Italian is by integrating the language into your life in such a way that you develop an emotional connection to it, that it becomes a lifestyle rather than an object of a kind of intellectual pursuit. Now, I would recommend. I think if I was coaching you through this, what I would get you to do is to stop everything that you're doing. I would probably recommend that, unless you really have to achieve this C1 exam that you're talking about. If you have to pass this C1 exam, it's a different story. We have podcast episodes about passing exams that you can go and listen to. I don't need to repeat that advice here, but I'm going to assume that you don't need to pass that exam. And what I would suggest is that you stop everything that you're doing right now and just scale everything back and try to re-engage with the heart. Why do you love Italian? Why did you decide to learn it in the first place? What is it that you like most about it? What turns you on? What is it that gets you? What is it that kind of what is it about the language that when you hear it, it engages you and touches your heart? So what is that thing? What was your original motivation, your original reasons? Was it movies? Was it literature? Was it the people? And I want you to think deeply about that, and I want you to reconnect with that right away. And the only thing that I want you to do is that thing which gets you closest to that passion that you've just identified. So if your passion is Italian movies, then I want you to focus on that. If your passion is just speaking with people, then I want you to focus on that. Because here's the thing, in any activity, there are 101 ways to exploit it. Okay. You mentioned in your question about movies, and I have very strong feelings. I think movies are very dangerous for many people because they distract you from the task of learning. However, if you are at a B1, B2 level, which you are, and you approach them in the right way, then movies can be an amazing learning resource. It all depends on what you do with them. Okay, so but I don't even want to go down that road because none of it's going to matter unless you're engaging with the thing that you love to do. And I would suggest as a first action point that you just say to yourself, right, for the next 3 weeks, for me, I don't know, there's something about a period of 3 weeks tends to work wonders with these kind of things. It helps you to reset whilst giving you the quality of depth of focus. You can go deep into something for 3 weeks, I find. But anyway, let's just say 3 weeks. I want you to take the next 3 weeks off and do no studying apart from spending quality time with the language and the things that you love. So let's just say that it's movies. I want you to spend the next 3 weeks doing nothing but watching your favorite movies or dramas in Italian. 100% pure hedonistic enjoyment of the language. And I want you to not try to learn or study anything, but just enjoy it. And then after those 3 weeks are up, notice what happens to you psychologically. How do you feel? Do you feel happier? Do you feel more positive? How do you feel about the language then after that period? And then notice if you've learnt anything. And I will bet that you will have learnt a lot of stuff, even if it wasn't conscious. Because this is the point we need to get back to. Once you can go back and get yourself to this point, a point of pleasure and goodwill and warm-hearted enjoyment of the language. Once we can get you to that point, then you're in a position to start refining what you're doing and actually learning. But you can't do it the other way around. You can't just try and force feed effective activities into your learning. You can try and you might succeed for a while, but you'll very quickly get to a burnout point, which it sounds like you're at right now. So I'd like to challenge you to do that for the next 3 weeks. Re-engage with Italian in the purest way that you know how. And then in 3 weeks' time, come back, leave me another message. Tell me what you did, what you found, what you experienced. And then from there, I will give you some specific advice for how to start exploiting that activity and making it part of a actual productive language learning routine. Okay? But we will come at it from a perspective of happiness and abundance and pleasure. Okay? That's quite interesting for me because I didn't know that was what I was going to say. It's just kind of ended up like that. But, I am very lucky to have many friends who have learnt many, many languages. And one of the commonalities that I have become very aware of amongst everybody who has devoted their lives to language learning is that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter unless it's something that enriches our lives. And so I'm more and more, I'm coming back to this, and I'm trying to position language learning as a source of enrichment and joy in our lives. And I'm sorry if this comes across as a little bit fluffy or vague. But, I think, and again, I'm assuming that you have no immediate need for Italian in your work or your life or something like that, in which case this whole answer is off the point. But yeah, that's what I'm feeling right now. That's how I'd like to answer this question. I hope that's okay, and I hope you're not abjectly disappointed with my answer. But again, that's from the heart. So I'd like to invite you to do that. Go off and do that. Come back in 3 weeks. Tell me what's happened, how you're feeling, what's different, and then we'll work and try to get something more tangible and actionable into your language learning process. To finishing that thought. Okay? Good luck. It's exciting if you can approach it this way, and there's tons of potential. And don't forget, your English is flawless, and you've learnt it to this level, so you are capable of speaking Italian to exactly the same level. We just need to find the commonalities there and reverse engineer the success that you've had with English. Okay? So I look forward to hearing from you. If you would like to ask me a question, ideally kept to under a minute, then you can go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask. I usually leave you with a resource, but I'm not going to do that today. I just want you to think about what we've spoken about and think how it might apply to your learning. Feel free to come and leave a comment on the show notes. You can find that at iwillteachyoualanguage.com/episode 139. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, class, for your question. And I'll see you in the next episode of the podcast.